Hey, this is John Carlos, and I'm here with a look at the Rocket Raccoon action figure from the Marvel Legends Infinite series, Guardians of the Galaxy Wave, which includes the Build A Figure of Groot. I really like that they're including the individual character artwork on each figure's packaging, instead of just the same artwork on all of them, like the Captain America Winter Soldier Wave. Now, articulation on this figure is a little different than all the other figures in this series because he's a lot smaller than the other ones. But he does have some decent articulation, which I'll show you now. He does have hinged ball joint shoulders. He doesn't have a double jointed elbow, but he has more than just a single joint. He does have a ball joint hinge in there, so that's cool. And his wrist has the basic swivel, but it's obviously too small to have its own separate hinge. His waist has like a little wibbly wobbly ball joint, and his head has a ball joint in it. I lifted up the back of his head, you can kind of see in there. It's a little too dark with this lighting to show you in there, but there is a ball joint in his head. However, it might as well just be a swivel because the way his neck is positioned, you can't really do anything with that range of motion of the ball joint. It just kind of looks from side to side. Also, his legs, I thought that these pieces at the shin would move, but they don't. They appear to be fully locked legs. Maybe yours move, but mine don't. Luckily, his tail does move because the way his feet are sculpted, he can't really stand stable on his own. In fact, some of the figures I saw in the packaging, the legs are a little more warped than others, like in the packaging. So these were some of the flattest feet I saw, and even then, they're not totally flat. He will fall on his own. But what's great is the tail is like the ultimate stabilizer for this figure. You just have him, find your right spot, and bam, there you go. Now the sculpting on this little guy is actually pretty good. If you look at like his back, the amount of work that went into the sculpting of just these little grooves in his back area and these little connectors to his shoulder piece. Not to mention just the fact that obviously he's furry, so they had to sculpt all the fur lines into him. But I dig the way they did his outfit. I think for a tiny figure, there's some really good detail as far as even just like these little rivets on his shoulder piece. That's really good stuff. His face is also sculpted really well. Now, paint is something worth noting on this figure. Now, pardon the crotch shot, but every figure that I saw, every single figure had sloppy paint on this black section of his inseam. So be on the lookout for that if you're hunting for these in person. If you're buying them online, it is what it is. But this little black section here above his collar and this little T section of paint right here can be a little sloppy. I saw some where the brown on the straps here were a little faded. And the face, that was the other thing. I picked this one. This one, if you look closely, his left eyeball, the paint is ever so slightly above where the eyeball is. But I ended up picking this one because I saw one that had better eyes, but the mouth was a mess. So be on the lookout for the black line that lines the mouth. Some are kind of off where the sculpt is. But all the brown and white paint in the ears is pretty solid. I think the paint on his back looks pretty good. I dig it. Now here's a look at Rocket's gun, and it's a pretty good accessory. It's got a lot of good sculptural details to it, and it's got some fun little paint. It's a little simple paint, but I do like the use of darker browns on it. But man, I really do dig the sculpting on this. Here's just a closer look if you want to see the details that went into the sculpting of this. Now, there are a few different ways that you can have Rocket use this. He does have a little trigger finger, which does fit around the handle right there. And technically, I guess you can bend his arm over this way and get him to hold the blaster like so. But you could also have the arm go in on the other side so that the end of the gun tucks into his arm a bit, like that. Or, like they have it featured on the back of the packaging, you can just sort of wedge his hand underneath the gut of the arm and like rest it. Well, try to rest it anyway on his body like that. Well, I'm trying here, people. Like so. Here's a look at Rocket's other accessory, the Hadron Enforcer. Now, I haven't seen the movie yet. At the time of this review, the movie's over a month away, but I have seen the trailer where you see Star-Lord firing this thing, and there are a few differences from how it appears in the trailer. These panels here are pretty accurate, but these little silver things sticking out, I don't see those in there. Also, this whole section here is kind of open and not shaped like that, but maybe that's part of the guidance system. I don't know, I haven't seen the movie yet, but there's a lot of really good work being done as far as the sculpting goes. There's some really good sculpting going on here if you take a closer look. Even these little ridges there. It's all really, really good work. Painting's really clean too. But yeah, it's a little different. It doesn't have like the little strap that goes over his shoulder, that little blue section. But it does attach to the Star-Lord figure like so. You can see it kind of bends out there for the waist and curves to the chest, and his hands can grip that little hand grip area there. But just based on my Star-Lord figure, whose wrists are pretty loose now, I had a really hard time trying to get him to hold this. It took me a while. Every time I get him to hold it, one of the wrists bends out and he ends up dropping it. But it looks pretty cool. I dig it. So here is Star-Lord holding the Hadron Enforcer. At least he's holding it now until he eventually drops it. It is considerably heavy compared to the figure. It does cause him to want to fall over, so you have to stabilize him by having him lean way back. And even then, I don't know if that's going to work or not. But it looks cool. It looks a little bit bigger than it does in the movie, or at least the trailer that I've seen so far. But overall, it looks cool. It's a pretty cool accessory for him to have. Now, moving on to Rocket. Overall, I dig the figure a lot. I like that the tail helps stabilize him to stand. He's cute and he's little and he's definitely a badass. I dig the figure a lot. Now it's worth noting before we leave that when you're buying this figure, you're also buying your Groot head. And one thing that I had to factor into when buying this figure was I may have found a really great Rocket, but it had a really lousy Groot head. I found some that had really great Groots, but not great Rockets. So if you're hunting for these in person, I recommend you have to weigh the pros and cons of each. Ultimately, I saw one that had a better Groot head where the eyeballs are painted slightly better. I went for this one. It was a pretty good Groot head overall, but it was the combination between the pros of this and the pros of that that led me to buy this. Judge for yourself if you're hunting for these in person, but I dig this figure a lot. Thanks for watching.